to run.
Hello. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Chair. I was invited to present to this meeting today. I flew in from Nevis on Sunday and unfortunately could not reach here before 1 p.m. I communicated with the Deputy Chair, with the Deputy Clerk, sorry.
Are you asking a question or making a presentation?
I will speak to a particular point made. I'm going on the record. I will address the issue as it relates, the discussion between...
No, but you're done to make a presentation.
I am, but are you closing?
No, we're not closing yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject with your leave, it is now 4:45 in the evening. May I ask what time we propose to conclude today? We are in fact already losing members from the committee.
We will try and get through the additional presentations.
May I ask how many additional presentations do we have?
3 more to go.
But Mr. Chairman,
15 minutes, hold on, 15 minutes per presentation. With that gives us 45 minutes, and we can truncate and get through.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, persons came here today to make full presentations to a committee that is duly alert to what they are presenting. It may in fact present a little bit of inconvenience to them to have to come back. But I want to suggest, based on what has happened here already since morning at 4:45, to anticipate that we can properly go through 3 more presentations and listen to them attentively and give them the due regard in terms of their substance and respect to those who are presenting. Is indulgent in a flight of fancy. I would want to move, Mr. Chairman, that we curtail this meeting as anticipated at 5 o'clock this evening and let those who have not yet presented come back another time so that they may be properly heard and we may properly analyze that which is being presented.
Do we have a seconder? There being none, the motion cannot be carried. Ms. Gooden, I want to thank you for your presentation, and I note that your comments are taken and noted, and we will press on with the other presentations.
Mr. Chair, may I ask, therefore, at this point, at what point in time on the clock do we anticipate concluding this meeting today? I may not have a second to the motion because the government feels that we must rush through all of this today. I don't know what your timetable is, but I think you have to give due respect to what people have to say and give it your fullest possible attention and energy. We've been sitting at this since morning, so what time do we propose to close?
I intend to hear the other 3 presentations, Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Chairman, that does not at all say to me anything about time.
Next presenter, you raised a motion and it was not carried. The next person up to present is Michelle Marshall. Is she here? So then we will go to Douglas Trotman.
Thank you, Chair. If I didn't know better, I would think that the Leader of the Opposition didn't want to hear me. On that note, I'll start by saying that I support this bill. I want to be clear. And before I go into the few points I have to make, I want to tell a little story. I'm sorry that Dr. Brung is gone. But
before you continue, just to note that presentations are limited to 15 minutes.
Yes, sir.
We're keeping time, and you'll be notified.
I observe the 15 minutes that went before me, sir. I really do. And I will stick to the 15 minutes. I'll go back to my story. Sitting here, listening to the academic discourse, my story speaks to something of reality. Having lost a wife on the 5th of April 2018, when the medical fraternity and others in this country would not look at the issue of medicinal cannabis. Indeed, I've heard a lot today, but yours truly registered as a student at the University of the West Indies to study biology and chemistry at the level of N1. That was in 2016. There was no one at UWI doing research in medical cannabis. I spoke to a Dr. Tinto, Professor Tinto, and he told me he would do everything that he could to help me in relation to getting some movement. My wife and I, Kathy Ann Trotman, and I dedicate today to her. We spoke, we went public, everybody said cannabis was illegal. They said it was illegal. Wrote the ministry, and the ministry wrote us back. You know, when the shoe is on the other foot, when you feel the pinch, you really understand what it is. I support the bill because I know there are people out there who need access. The AG mentioned palliative care. At end stage, cannabis works better than any other drug out there. I have the voice notes from my wife to prove it. Doctors in this country and pharmacists can take their positions. That is their right. Right now, this bill is actually setting up two regimes. And if I had to make my submission by way of public just now, I would have done that. If you look to the third schedule, you will see where, in addition to the minister performing a role similar to the Minister of Health, the third schedule creates the dual acts by defining medical cannabis and redefining the term cannabis under the Drug Abuse Control and Prevention Act. So that if you're going to make changes and really cede the health aspect to the Minister of Health, you need to relook at the third schedule. The AG is correct. This is it's an industry bill. Industry, licensing, maybe taxation, and at this point I must disclose, Indar, Minister Weir had invited me to participate in a process which resulted in a cabinet paper being drafted. As a member of the public, I can't see cabinet papers, but I gave my input for a period of over 4 days, a couple hours. I wish I'd been invited to speak or to give input into the drafting of the legislation, because as this stands, you really have two ministers of health, one being the Minister of Agriculture. You have to fix that. So there are two regimes, but what the Minister of Agriculture is supposed to be doing, essentially, is rolling out the framework under which cannabis will be grown, let's say processed, etc., and hopefully the country will make some money from it while being patient-centered. So the pharmacist is correct when she says that the Act already exists. Since 1993, in response to our international obligations, the last conference being in 1988, we implemented some draconian measures in terms of punishment, etc., which was the whole purpose of that particular convention. And you'll find all of those in CAP 131. So if I can try to get back on track, remembering that my 15 minutes is a bit different to the other 15 minutes. If you look at Article 1 of I just referred to the single convention, cannabis means the flowering or fruiting tops of the cannabis plant, excluding the seeds and leaves when not accompanied by the tops, from which the resin has not been extracted by whatever name they may be designated. And that's an interesting definition in international law. So that the definition of cannabis here does not include all of the plant. What we did in our domestic legislation was to penalize persons who would be rolling the leaves and the stalks, when really and truly what the international law was interested in was, no, the most important part, which is the tops, right? So this legislation was done in the 90s. I think the late Honorable Bramford Tate, he signed the regulations. So if you look at the period, it would have been a useful exercise maybe for some student to look at Hansard and see what the intents were at that time. Right? So what we did was to create a more oppressive regime for our citizens than we had to. Right? Now, I've come to this letter, and I will be a little over the place, but I want to say this. So you write to the ministry under Cat 131, the old legislation, and you say to the government, look, cannabis is legal. I need your assistance, right? Because it is what we believe can work. We have a prescription from Canada now. We have one from Jamaica, CARICOM. And I received this letter from the ministry, March 4th, 2016. Mr. Douglas Trotman, Black Jacobin Chambers, Hoover House, Belmont Road, St. Michael. Dear sir, re-licensed to import, produce, and supply marijuana for medical purposes. Your correspondence dated January 27, 2016 has been received. The Ministry of Health wishes Mrs. Trotman well in the management of her illness in the current circumstances. The matter of medical marijuana use in Barbados is being researched and discussed. However, as you are aware, there would be a need for legislative changes to facilitate the legal use of marijuana in Barbados. Given the importance of this decision, the Ministry of Health wishes to ensure that the medical gains will outweigh any possible negative social impacts before a paper is presented for consideration as is required. The Ministry of Health wishes to assure you that this matter will be expedited and a recommendation will be referred to the relevant agency in due course. That is the type of letter you receive when you're sick and dying. Signed, Permanent Secretary, an old friend, doing his job. Now, where are we today? That was 2016. We're in 2019. Minister Bostic accepted a recommendation that was made. And there are a lot of things that people don't get credit for. I'm not here to claim credit. I'm here to state facts. The Cayman model, putting the drugs, Cayman Island, they bought some cannabis. They had it dispensed to patients, and they had the doctors monitor the patients. A simple way of collecting the anecdotal evidence. What did I do? I said to the now